I'm Ravi Kapoor in New York City. We're along with Shalli Kumar and Manasvi. In the aftermath of the Donald Trump historic victory last night, a lot of people didn't see it coming, but this man clearly knew this was possible. Shalli Kumar founded the Republican Hindu Coalition, very instrumental in helping to coalesce Indian Americans to vote for Donald Trump. Must have been a magical experience for you last night to be there when Donald Trump was declared the winner.
That was a great feeling and a great moment. It's a historical win, not only for America, but for Hindus all across the world, Hindu Americans, Indian Americans, and India, and the upcoming relationship between U.S. and India, making 21st to be Indo-American century.
Tell us about what you did since the Republican National Convention. We had a chat there on the floor, much to the chagrin of the Secret Service, I should add, but very interesting to get your thoughts at that time. Much has happened in the few months here. Donald Trump himself had ups and downs, but somehow he was able to coalesce folks to come out and turn out for him on Election Day. What efforts did you make? And tell me about Trump, and go inside there a little bit about how Trump was able to pull this off.
You see, I had to get my biggest weapon that is sitting right next to me. So I called my daughter, Manasvi, who is in Bollywood. And so she took, I think it's about 3 months ago, right, when the RNC took place. So ever since, after that, she has been with me. And we have been raising funds for Donald Trump, as well as very active on the ground. We were given the task of delivering 3 states, that is Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. That was our task. So actually, you should have seen Manasvi and my elation and the elation of our members at the Trump victory party when those 3 states were declared, all 3. So we said, okay, that's 3 for 3, pretty good. We had he had not been awarded Pennsylvania yet, so he was there, but he had not been declared as the winner. But we said, at least our task is done. Yeah. And of course, when he was declared as the president, then it became total jubilation. For a good, let's say 2 months of campaigning, our focus was the 3 states, and particularly Florida, where we camped out in Florida for a good month. And in the last 1 week of campaign, we expanded that activity when it became clearer that even states like Pennsylvania, states like Michigan, states like Wisconsin are in the play, that he has been able to successfully go deep into the deep blue states and make an impact. When it became obvious that was going to happen, he was already ahead in Ohio. In Florida also, he was slightly ahead. North Carolina, we were tied. But then when Pennsylvania came into picture and Wisconsin came into picture and Michigan came into picture, we jumped in those states as well.
Talk about Florida briefly, because I saw something the other day. You and Eric Trump going into Florida together, visiting a Hindu temple. What does that mean symbolically? Obviously, the Indian American community overwhelmingly is liberal, but you have cut to the core, reaching out to Hindu Americans, trying to appeal to folks at a very base level, and bringing the Trump children involved. Laura Trump also going to Virginia to a Hindu temple. Tell me about that experience and why bring these folks to Hindu temples. What did that symbolize for you?
Well, I'll answer this question in 2 parts. One, I will let Manasvi answer what she was primarily the person in charge of that visit and was the principal host for Eric Trump at the Hindu temple of Orlando. But one statement I would like to sort of counter or give you a different perspective, and that is when you are talking about liberal. No, actually, Hindu Americans are quite conservative. So far, they haven't paid attention to what is discussed on the policy tables, how legislation is framed, and what I find most interesting experience for me during this last 3 months was I addressed roughly 50 meetings, average about 200 people. So 10,000 Hindu Americans, Indian Americans in the meeting. And what we would find, the participants will be at the start of the meeting, will be, say, maybe 2/3 Democrat or what you said, liberal. And at the end of the meeting, you could just count for sure, and it became almost a routine. 90% will become Trump fans, Republican fans, and conservative. So that is simply an information gap. Once you educate the people and the information gap is bridged and they become knowledgeable, they essentially follow my example. I was a diehard Democrat for first 10 years of my life in the United States, and once you come to know the policies and issues and how they affect our daily lives, then you have no choice but to come to the Republican side, because fundamentally we are free enterprise people. We have fiscal discipline. We have strong family values, and we want a firm policy against terrorism. So once people come to know details of those things, they convert to the Republican side. Trump's side is easier even than the Republican side. Now going to this Orlando temple visit, I'll let Manasvi describe that.
So I think traditional in Hinduism, before you do anything good, you invoke gods, take their blessings. So I think Trump family, being very supportive of Hindus and Indians, they wanted to connect with us in that way, and they agreed to do these events with us. Eric especially was very sweet about it. He was very interested in knowing our traditions and knowing what each god signifies. And by the end of the event, we were like, thank you for adopting Hinduism. He was like, no, thank you for adopting the Trump family. So they were very sweet about it. And we were campaigning in Florida for about a month, and people were asking us that, are they with us? Are they really with us? This was their way of showing their support to us. They attended 4 of our events in 1 month, 20 days actually. So this was their way of showing us support.
What happens from here now, Shalli? Obviously, you've made a big splash, and you've succeeded. Your efforts have succeeded clearly. Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. But there are obviously a number of folks that are concerned about the future. They don't know what to expect in January. What can you tell folks that did not vote for Donald Trump? What can you tell Indian Americans that did not vote for Donald Trump, that were ardent Hillary Clinton supporters, or certainly longtime Democrats? What message do you have for those folks?
We will be quickly passing legislation that becomes official bills with respect to trade, with respect to defense, there's defense ties between U.S. and India, and trade. There are lots of artificial barriers in trade between United States and India. So those barriers will be dropped as soon as the Congress, where we have full support anyway, but as soon as we have these bills put on President Trump's desk, now I have to get used to calling him President Trump, not Donald anymore. Like he always chides me if I call him even Mr. Trump. He will always say, "No, you have to call me Donald." Okay, so But anyway, so he has promised that the legislation will be passed very quickly, also with respect to the immigration issues that are plaguing our community. One of the biggest one being that all these 1.5 million H-1 visa holders whose green card petitions have been approved, but they have a wait period of 50 years to 75 years just because they're from India. So that is an issue which needs to be resolved. And in general, we will be also talking about legislation which is really old-time legislation from 40s and 50s regarding immigration laws. So I don't want to take up that much of your time, but I know the legislation on the Hill in some depth, but is generally I will describe the legislation bills in Capitol Hill now will have a clear, quick path to becoming law.
So certainly these are common issues that affect Democrats and Republicans alike, and certainly Indian Americans of all stripes will certainly be affected by this change at the very top. Give us a personal anecdote. Obviously, you spent some time with the Trump family. You spent time with Donald Trump. You were there for the coronation last night. What does this indicate to you? What does this indicate about America? What does this indicate about the Indian American community? And what does this indicate for 2017 and beyond for this country?
Well, first thing, I have to give a lot of credit to democracy, a lot of credit to democracy in U.S. It's in a way reminds me of 1977 when Indira Gandhi was thrown out from India. That is, people have some very basic intelligence. For quite some time, long time, the Democrat Party and as well as the what is called the establishment wing of the Republican Party was not listening to masses. Huge, great big number of ordinary middle class citizens who were not progressing in terms of their wage growth, in terms of their profession, in terms of their let's say job security, and 1/4 of the graduates which come out of college these days is still have a hard time finding a job. So the economic growth, which is so anemic, 1.2% per year, national debt going through the roof, and all these things which were not getting taken care of, will get taken care of now.
Finally, for you, last night was historic for a number of fronts. Obviously, Donald Trump winning the election, but there were 5 Indian Americans put in the United States Congress, 1 U.S. Senator, Kamala Harris, and 4 members of Congress. They're all Democrats. Obviously, you're a Republican. You're making outreach to Indian Americans to try to get them to become Republicans. Talk about the dialogue you'll have with these 5 new members of Congress entering in 2017. What kind of relationship you would try to build with them and Donald Trump for that matter? And moreover, are you going to try to steer more Indian Americans towards the Republican Party through this kind of outreach that you outlined over the last couple of months?
Well, one particular gentleman who I know out of these 5, I could tell him, so sorry, Raja, I will tell your audiences about you. So Raja Krishnamurthy has now Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, right? Or Congressman-elect Raja Krishnamurthy. First of all, congratulations. He has sat in my office, for days and days on end, trying to get my support. And he's a good guy, nice guy. And I always tell him, Raja, you just become a Republican or at least an independent and then we'll get you elected very quickly. Now, this time around, the opportunity came that there was nobody else. Tammy Duckworth had to move to wanted to move to the Senate side, so there was nobody else, so he got elected. Otherwise, he would have a difficult time. Yeah, I'm glad that there are more Indian Americans, or half Indian Americans at least, partial Indian Americans who are in the Congress. But what is very important to me and our people is that they remain true to their faith, whatever their faith is. That is, if they are Hindus, they remain true to the Hindu faith, the Hindu way of life. If they are Muslim, let them remain true to the Muslim faith. If they are Christians, let them, remain good Christians and not change their faith based upon expediency. And second is, I will be asking them, I will ask them to be bold enough to fight your party leadership when it comes to interests of India. I will give you an example. I must admit, even though I'm a diehard Republican now, I'm quite impressed with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And I complimented her just recently, maybe a couple of months ago, that she is not necessarily towing the Pelosi line, and that that will be our concern, that we now have all three branches of government on the Republican side. We want to have a very rapid, quick first 100 days where we have a very aggressive agenda. So, and it is going to be pro-India, pro-Indian American agenda, and wherever we could get the support of Indian American legislators, hope we get that. Sure, there will be a fight from the top. That is, Nancy Pelosi will be issuing whips through their whips to oppose that legislation, even though it's pro-India, pro-Indian American legislation. So I would ask these new congressmen-elects or congresswomen-elects to support, to side with the national interest as well as the interest of U.S., interest of India, and the interest of 21st century to be an Indo-American century.
Obviously, you're getting a lot of congratulations all over the web and through text. Swami Ramdev congratulated you, and I understand you coordinated a call between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump. How did that go, and what was the dialogue like?
Well, no, actually, there was a request that had come in. We had been working very, very hard, so I was asleep. They did find me, but I will say the call went well. I don't want to take any credit for that, but the call had gone quite well. We liked the fact that we have a prime minister who is fairly aggressive. He wanted to beat the Chinese to the punch in being the first one to congratulate Donald Trump for becoming the president-elect. Yeah.